The machine learning algorithms, like in practice, should never replace humans who are in the end responsible for the decision making. For academics in this field, the whole idea of thinking about machine learning algorithms, the models, is a very challenging one. Again, the question is machine learning algorithms, are they doing a better job than just using the old regression analysis? Well, the whole topic of machine learning algorithms has started moving into psychological assessment, particularly personnel selection, so psychological assessment for the intention of selecting personnel since some time. And it is very important to realize that a machine learning algorithm is not just a pre-formulated like formula, predetermined formula, I want to say. Whereas like machine learning is something that is self-learning. So each time there are new data available to put into the algorithm, it will teach itself essentially. And there are until now 3 ways that people are using it in the area of personnel selection. One, to just get rid of the classic way that psychologists would predict future work performance, which would be like a formula that we call regression, so regression formula, and replace it by many very complicated and hardly understandable machine learning models, such as random forest or extreme gradient boosting, etc. Then the question, of course, becomes, is it doing a better job? So there are a few empirical studies who have been doing this competition between the old notion of using a regression analysis, as we have been doing within psychology for more than maybe a century, versus this new thing. So that's very important if one says it's going to work in a better way. So what do we see? And the other way that it is used is that it so-called tries to capture the policy, the thinking process of recruiters, of assessors. And again, that is also something that has been done. It's an old notion within psychology for a very long time. So already halfway in the 20th century, people were talking about policy capturing. It used to be called paramorphic representation, a wonderful word. And again, the question is machine learning algorithms, are they doing a better job than just using the old regression analysis? The third way is something which is, well, you must have read about, people must have read about it, that a lot of very different input data now can be used. So, for instance, when a candidate is doing a video interview, then the algorithm will take in a lot of microfacial expressions or like the pitch of voice and paraverbal information, and also a lot of meaningless information that we cannot interpret ourselves. And then the question becomes, is that doing a better job? And if it's doing a better job in using information that is maybe undescribable or not understandable for humans, what it has to do in the first place with maybe the later job performance or work performance, then the question becomes, are we okay with that? You know, if we are just saying, oh, it predicts well, but we don't understand why. Are we fine with that? For academics in this field, the whole idea of thinking about machine learning algorithms, the models, is a very challenging one, because in the meantime, perhaps there are like 5 or maybe 10 or even more types of models that can be used, but they are almost per definition not understandable, like maybe a model with 1,000 different dimensions, not to be able to be described by humans. And then, coming from the area of personnel selection, it is important to think about our own basics in this field. And the own basics in this field are all about understandability, are all about first thinking about theory, first thinking about how a certain maybe job with its components in terms of tasks, how that would imply certain necessary behavior at work. For instance, maybe nowadays virtual work environment, that you need to be very self-disciplined nowadays, because nobody's going to say, now you have to start working when you're all alone behind your laptop at work. And then how that relates theoretically, how that relates conceptually to what you want to know and measure during your personnel selection procedure with your applicants. So for people like me and colleagues and researchers at universities, we argue that we need to do a lot of effort to see where there are components, perhaps, of such models can be made understandable, or whether we are able to figure out if there's any bias in these models. The machine learning algorithms, like in practice, should never replace humans, who are in the end responsible for the decision making. So what organizations normally would do is just look at what the algorithm predicts, and then should also, themselves think of what they would do, or whether they would perhaps agree with this, or whether they would deviate from it. Because it could never be the case that an organization said, well, you were not accepted for this job, and the only reason is that the algorithm says so. Yeah, the future of machine learning algorithms within the area of personnel selection is part of discussions also in society, but for instance in Europe, related to the European regulations, and it is a very high stakes context. So, things that will happen to a person is either get a job or be rejected, so high stakes. And presently, regulations are coming into place that really restrict the usage of machine learning algorithms when it is very difficult to make it transparent. So my prediction about the future is that it could be like part of maybe the whole prediction problem, predicting later job performance, but that it always will remain in the hands of humans, and that the recruiters or the organization that uses it and the applicants that are undergoing the selection procedures need to be satisfied in terms of explainability. And the big question, of course, is when are we satisfied in terms of whether something is a good enough explanation? We are driving cars, and we don't want to have the whole machinery in the car explained to us before we start driving the car. And to what extent are we going to be satisfied?